Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, our nightly look back at a specific day in history, where we take a look back at that day, examine the events of that day, the historical context in which the events took place, the historical ramifications of those events, and we take a look at some people that were born on that day and some people that died on that day. As always, if you have not yet, please hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content, and tell a friend. And without any further ado, this day in history, March 13th. And on this day, in 1868, the impeachment trial of President Andrew Johnson began. It was the first impeachment trial of a president in American history. Johnson stood accused of violating the Tenure of Office Act, which had passed Congress over his veto in 1867. Congress opposed Johnson and repeatedly overrode his vetoes. To weaken Johnson's authority, Congress passed the Tenure of Office Act, which prohibited the president from removing federal officers without the consent of the Senate. When Johnson fired Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, Congress began impeachment proceedings. He was impeached by the House, and the vote to convict and remove him from office failed in the Senate by one vote. So, like the other two presidents in American history who have been impeached by the House, President Clinton and President Trump, Johnson was acquitted by the Senate. That is the history at this point of impeachments of the presidents in this country. They have been impeached by the House and acquitted by the Senate. We never got the full resolution of what would have happened to Richard Nixon, but it's, as I said in an earlier video, highly likely he would have been convicted in the Senate and removed from office. There have been several federal judges that have been not only impeached by the House, but convicted and removed from office by the Senate. Several of those, and those votes generally are not close at all. They're almost always unanimous. Those are very, almost universally cut and dry cases. Births that occurred on this day. Rick Lazio was born in 1958 in Amityville, New York. Now, this is a blast from the past. Lazio was the unsuccessful Republican candidate for United States Senate in New York in the year 2000. He lost to the then First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Lazio was not the initial candidate to run against Hillary Clinton, though. That honor would have been Rudy Giuliani. But Giuliani had some personal issues at the time. And he also was dealing with a bout with cancer. So Rudy had to drop out, and the Republicans scrambled to find a replacement. And they settled on Lazio because he was seen as the most moderate member of the congressional leadership. He was in leadership. He was seen as the most moderate. He was quite young. And he also fit what they were looking for. He was a New Yorker by birth. They hammered Hillary Clinton as being a quote-unquote carpetbagger. And it was a very brutal race. As I said, Lazio got in late with only 5 months to go before the election. He became only the second person ever to complete the full Ginsburg, which is going on all 5 major Sunday shows. Now, That has been completed since then by many people, but he was only the second. It, as I said, it was the most expensive Senate race in history to that point, $90 million. Of course, Hillary Clinton would win the race. She would win it by 12.27 percentage points, or 831,580 popular votes over Lazio. So it was a landslide for the then First Lady and future Secretary of State. It was a very decisive win. Lazio would seek the Republican nomination for governor in 2000, had the backing of the Republican Party of the state, but would lose the primary to a Tea Party backed candidate who would go on to lose to then state Attorney General Andrew Cuomo, who is currently the governor and been elected to 2 terms since his initial election. Deaths that occurred on this day. Reubin Askew died in 2014 at the age of 85 in Tallahassee, Florida. Askew was the governor of Florida from 1971 until 1979. And Askew supported school desegregation and busing to achieve integration. He was one of the new South governors that came to power in the 70s across the South. He was in the mold of a Dale Bumpers, a Terry Sanford, and later Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, and others. He was a very big believer in transparency in government and politics, and was generally seen as a good person. He turned down the chance to be George McGovern's running mate in 1972. McGovern would initially pick Thomas Eagleton to be his running mate, but after that debacle, where Eagleton had to leave the race because he had sought mental health treatment, it went to Sergeant Shriver, and McGovern and Shriver would go on to lose 49 states in the general election to President Nixon and Vice President Agnew. Of course, Agnew would have to resign in 1973, and Nixon would resign in August of 74 under the threat of impeachment. After leaving office, he would run for president in 1984, but did not fare well. He was, while progressive on many issues, he was more conservative than other candidates in the race. He was pro-life and supported many issues that were out of the mainstream of the Democratic Party. He announced that he would be running for the U.S. Senate in 1987, but dropped out in May of 88, citing the constant need for fundraising. He would serve on boards the rest of his life and be honored with many awards. And one of the great books written about this incredible governor was written by Dr. Gordon Harvey, who is the head of the History and Foreign Language Department at Jacksonville State University. Full disclosure, I've taken Dr. Harvey for many classes and respect him immensely, and have one of his books signed by the author and professor himself. And I have heard him speak of Governor Askew many times in class, and while he offers a very balanced view of him, you can tell that he respects this man immensely. And just reading about Askew and his writing of him, it's you can tell that Florida had a special governor at a unique time with Governor Askew. So, yes. I will see you all tomorrow. Y'all have a great day, and I'll see you again.